What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Utica, New York, and joined by my co-host, the one and only, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. Mr. Fitzgerald, how are we doing today? Baby's almost here.
Baby's almost here any day now. I feel like I've said that the last few podcasts.
I know. One of these podcasts, we're going to actually say that the baby's here. So we're just going to keep.
Yeah, or
baby's almost here.
I just won't be on the next one. We'll see. But but yeah, moved into a new office in the heart of Lindenhurst on Long Island. So that's been keeping me busy. I'm once this baby comes and I get kind of settled in, I'm excited to kind of like grow my roots in that town and really get more involved and see what I can make out of it. So that's been keeping me pretty driven as well. But back to the guest, I'm excited to meet and talk to for the first time, Cameron. I again, we haven't spoken before, but I'm pumped to have this conversation because I know Stephen and I are trying to do, we're trying to build out a niche of our own. So I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah. So Cameron was one of the first people kind of in my agency owner journey that I met and was very lucky to spend some time with in Nashville. I've talked a lot on the show about Mr. Crowley being my insurance older brother here, and Cameron and Crowley have some history and are close. And so we got to spend some time in Nashville, and just a great guy. And I'm super excited to have him. So I want you all to help me welcome Cameron Pechia, the owner of Valley Trucking Insurance. Cameron, how are you today? Thanks for taking the time.
Oh man, anytime. Steven and Sean, how you guys doing?
I say we just stop the episode and go back to Broadway in Nashville. Let's just do it around one more time. That was a blast, huh?
You know what? If I didn't have my personal tour guide, Steven, there, I don't know if I would have enjoyed Nashville as much, but so far, Nashville is one of my favorite cities I've been to just because some of the stuff we did and like the things that we were doing. And that night was so fun. It was an amazing time.
I'd like to side note and celebrate a win for myself. We went to Austin 2 weeks ago just for a weekend trip, my wife and another couple. And once we booked that, a close friend of mine said, "Hey, I just booked a trip to Nashville, just a Monday to Wednesday on whatever this week is." And I'm like, "Oh," he's like, "Come on, you got to go." And everyone knows if you say Nashville, I'm all in. And I'm like, man, could I do it the week that I get back from the other trip? Yes. Should I? No. So there is there's the beautiful, the scratch agent in me said, "No, Stephen, that is not a good idea. You don't need to go on another trip." And anyways, we love Nashville, but enough talk about that. Cameron, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners for those who are learning about you for the first time, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts that we want to talk about.
Yeah, let's go, man. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me on. I love the mission that you guys are on and what you guys are trying to do and kind of shed some light on, scratch agencies and the challenges that you would face when embarking on this journey, because we know there's a ton of them. So, and I think just a quick little point out for you having the discipline to not go to Nashville. That's what it takes, right? Is discipline, like kind of the key word, and just really what's going to get most of the scratch agents through all this. So a little bit about myself. I started insurance when I was 20 years old, officially licensed when I was 21. Started in the slums of a basement, 2007, going in 2008, which for those that haven't been around that long, like was a recession. And then I decided to start with construction and contractor. So I've always been, and I came into the insurance industry with like a niche focus and dealt with niche customers. Always was commercial primarily, and it evolved and I went into some other stuff. But that was Wolf of Wall Street. That was cold calling. That was finding your own lead list, sorting things at night, making notes, not knowing what I'm doing. Kind of ignorance is bliss. And there's a whole story. There's, if people wanted to know more, they're happy to reach out. But anyway, so first couple weeks in, I'm dialing, smiling and dialing. Hey, let me put a bid in on your insurance, trying to use lingo for contractors, all this kind of stuff. And I remember I landed an account. And at the time, I think it was like maybe 1,500 or 2,000. I don't really even remember exactly the exact amount, but it was enough commission to that point in my life. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is the job for me, for sure. You got to call people, talk to them, get to know them, fill out some paperwork and do that. Obviously, since then, it's evolved tremendously. And I've learned the values of insurance and the intricacies and the contract language and all these different things that you end up figuring out. But at the surface level, that's what hooked me. And then from there, you kind of build and keep growing. So fast forward, joined another firm, came in. They had really not a huge commercial presence, like if any at all. It was mostly personal lines shop, which was fine. So then I learned the personal line side of the house, learned how to kind of manage a book, the workings of the different carriers, some contingencies, really how to run a business. Because on the prior one, it was me and a buddy. We did a satellite office, so I can't say scratch, but it was just us. Like we didn't have much support. We learned on our own. This new one, I kind of looked to, and I'm like, gosh, there's an opportunity here to learn from some senior folks, which, you know, at that time I was kind of searching for mentors, somebody to help me. And I had reached out to other agency owners in the area. There wasn't any groups like IAOA or at least that I had found, the masterminds or any of these things where people are just so willing to share and help. And really everyone was like kind of safeguarded. It's like, oh man, I'm not going to tell you the secret sauce, or I'm not going to help you. Like, you know, what they eat makes me shit type thing. And I'm like, whatever, nothing you do in your day influences me. You know, I'm just kind of out here looking for help. So that led me to, All Lines Associates, which is I'm now one of the owners and partners of, you know, which has been a great experience. It kind of rounded me out a lot, helped me on the actual business front, understanding commission reconciliation, the P&Ls, hiring, firing, growing pains, that kind of stuff. So it went from a relatively small agency, you know, fast forward a number of years, and we're decent size and doing pretty well. But on that journey, I started a niche into trucking and transportation. And, you know, initially, like, you kind of think niche, you know, people throw up a landing page, people will say they niche into something, and then like next week in the Facebook group, it's like, hey, how do I write this? Right? Something completely different. How do I do this? And it's like, that's not a true niche, right? They're a generalist still at heart. And for me, I kind of want to just elevate and take it further and just really, if I'm going to do this journey, and an opportunity came up. I had done transportation quite a bit in the past, and I've been around truckers. My family was truck drivers, long haul truck drivers. I grew up in the shop around a truck. You know, they're drinking beers and working on stuff and things like that. So I knew it. I knew the lingo. I can connect with them. And then I kind of took that from, okay, we're going to do this niche. We're going to do it right. And so what I did effectively was create its own brand, its own agency underneath an umbrella, if you will, just the way it's structured. But it like completely separate phone numbers, separate teams, separate identities, separate processes, separate everything. So basically turn this niche into like a scratch agency, if you will, for lack of better terms, but like its own deal, its own pillar. And so since then, it's been going really well. It kind of blew up, obviously, amidst COVID and the economy right now. You know, there's challenges and obstacles and things that pop up every single day. But you got to remember, the two niches that I was in when I started was contractors and trucking. You know, those go hand in hand with like just so much pain, like so much service, so much headache, so much problems, agency bill, so much exposure. Like, people think it's easy, but it's truly not at a high level. Like, there's so much that goes into it, and I'm kind of a glutton for punishment, I feel like, for that. So that's kind of a quick run through. Like, we can talk about anything you want in there, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a gist on that. So, and then before I forget though, and Steven, you met my lovely wife, Ashley. So let's shout out my wife. And then that's a reason that helped me through a lot of this. Like, let's be real, right? Like, having that support system at home. And then I got two beautiful little girls. So heavily involved in like coaching the kids' sports and being there. Like, that's the beauty of insurance that you don't even realize maybe when you get in, is like the freedom it affords you, the flexibility it affords you to show up at everything. So that's just something that I just want to make mention of real quick. So
Ashley's the best.
I love that. Yeah, I love that, Cameron. That's awesome stuff. Two questions for you, because I really want to dive into more of the niche stuff. So part one of the question is, why develop a niche? Like, what made you think to niche down, so to speak? And then day one of building that niche at this agency, what was your thought process for prospecting for it and building around that niche?
Yeah, for sure. And those are great questions. First, and I think, and I don't know, you guys have probably heard it, right? The cliche terms of the niches are in the riches, or people that you maybe look up to or that you've heard talk or at different conferences
For sure. Yeah.
have really said, hey, if you can niche focus, you will be more successful. And I guess I was a little bit fortunate, and luck does play a little bit of a factor. And let's be real, when I started a satellite agency, and it was essentially scratch minus, hey, you don't have Ivans and get the appointments, but it was all brokerage, non-standard. Like it was interesting, but it was a niche focus. We dealt with construction, the contractor trade, which obviously bleeds and blends into transportation and some of those things. So I fortunately had that exposure at the age of 20. I didn't know it. I didn't realize it, anything like that. Then fast forward, going through personal lines and all these other things, health insurance. I sold health insurance. I did life insurance. I did home and auto and all these different things, every kind of nail salon and restaurant and bar. And I'm going to be the food truck king. There's a ton of food trucks in the Northwest. Like, let's do food trucks only. And, they're great little sparks or flashes in the pan, but none of them really stuck. None of them, I wasn't that passionate about it. I think I was taking that entrepreneurial spirit and like, hey, I can make this and I can turn this into a revenue generator and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're just chasing money, you're going to fizzle out. You're going to burn out. You're not passionate about it, right? And if you can't truly connect with your niche or your ideal client or whatever you want to call it, there's so much pain that goes along with some of these things that you just won't even persevere, won't want to, right? It just probably wouldn't even be worth it. So for me, maybe using the analogy of like, if you got hurt and let's say, Steven was headed to the bank and he's carrying his bags of money now that he's his own agency owner, and he hurts his shoulder, like, who are you going to go see, right? Are you going to go to an orthopedic specialist and someone that specializes in like sports rehabilitation and injuries? Are you going to go to an urgent care? Are you going to go to just a general practitioner? To take that a little bit more extreme, something happens with your eyesight or with the brain or with something like that, you're going to go to the person that knows that inside and out and that's done it, that is trusted, that has proof, that has a reputation. Like, you're not just going to go to urgent care and be like, hey, I think I got a brain tumor, help me out, right? Or something that's a little extreme, but
yeah,
and that's anyways. So I think for me, thinking like that and then hearing that voice in my head of, hey, niche down, the riches are in the niches. And there's some reasons why, because when you, and it doesn't have to be industry, it doesn't have to be really a client type or anything like that. You can have a niche within a vertical within coverages. So if you wanted to be like, a shout out to Chris Green for flood, like he took flood and went way deep, right?
Crazy.
I mean, and it's awesome. I respect him immensely. Like what he's done, I've watched, from the beginning, and it's like, dude, that dude took and ran with it. And like, who would take flood and turn it into this niche? He did, and he did an awesome job. You can do that with cyber. You can lead with cyber. You can do that with, niches, and there's macro niches, sub niches, there's client types. So people that focus on personal lines, good friends of mine, Matt and Zach, focused on the home buying process. And so they took over Massachusetts with personal lines, leading with home and rounding out accounts from there. That's a niche. So people think of niche like, oh, I'm going to do trucking. Oh, I'm going to do restaurants. Oh, I'm going to do this. Those are niches, but there are different levels to that. So that's where you find the passion, the connection, what drives you, who you truly want to help. So one of the exercises that, and I've started this early on, and I kind of knew this, is a business plan. Write your business plan, come up with everything, outlining your financial goals, what your life looks like, what does your business look like, where do you want to be? Obviously you tier those things, but what was super important to me is who's your ideal client and why, and then why are you doing this? So let's make sure we focus on that. Why do you do what you do, Stephen? You know what I mean? These are good questions, right? So like, you ask yourself, why do I get up in the morning and why do I do what I do? Motivations are different for everybody, and it's not always money, and it's not ever going to be the number one motivator. I think on a surface level, salespeople are motivated by commissions. I get it, the hunt, the thrill, the chase. But for me, that shifted focus to time, some freedom, my family, what I can provide, the experiences, impacts on people's lives I can make. All these different things now creep up into my why, which, get me up in the morning and keep me driving and pushing. And so that it's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's what helped me get to the niche, because then my focus, my energy, every waking moment, for that team specifically is only trucking. That's all they speak. That's all they know. That's all they work with. They understand it inside and out. They understand contracts. They understand the day to day. They understand what a truck is. You'd be amazed at how many people or agents say they write trucking, but truly don't even have never been in a truck, seen a truck, walked around a truck, could name the parts on a truck. And that's just because that's what I'm used to. But I grew up in the restaurant industry. I can go into restaurants and I can turn that into a niche. And in fact, we did a little bit. I didn't take it to the level we did on the transportation side. But throughout my career, I've kind of looked at things that intrigued me and I was passionate about, and those are what I explored and took to a high level.
So let's break this apart if we can a little bit. So, and I'm glad the first thing you led with is what we've always heard about passion, right? If you can't stand the smell of pizza and hate the taste of it, do not start a niche in pizza places, right? Like, I mean, that makes complete sense. But if you have the passion for it, you have the plan, but maybe you're lacking the knowledge. Maybe I didn't grow up around trucking. I got the passion for whatever reason, or insert niche here. What would be your suggestion for the listener that's listening to this that wants to create a niche? They have a passion for it. They've done their homework up to the ability they can. They've done the business plan of how they're going to attack that niche, but more from a knowledge standpoint of how do I become the expert in that niche?
Yeah, I think the simple and convenient answers to that are, and social media is beautiful, right? That's how I met you, Stephen, is like, let's be real, through social media, by meeting Crowley, by being a part of these groups that for some crazy reason, I decided to hop on a plane and go meet a bunch of people that I never met in my life to try to learn something. It's all from a social media group. So get involved where they're at, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, I don't know, wherever you choose to spend your time. But there are groups, there are people, there are influencers, there are areas of, folks and pockets that you can learn and how to speak their lingo, what to do. Real estate investors is a big one, grocery. There's groups for everything, like anything you could possibly want. The other thing are associations, right? Where are your clients? So as you identify your ideal client, what do they do? Where are they at? Who do they talk to? Who do they interact with? Who are the people that need them or interact with them? So start finding your synergies and your centers of influence that can make connections, or that you can create a network group, build a network group, join a network group. I don't know. There's all kinds of things you can do that will put you in, their field, if you will, right? So if it's restaurants or grocery stores or things like that, food vendor shows, distribution folks, people that do HR, payroll, or, there's all kinds of different people that interact with your ideal client. You need to find them, start talking to them, start, trying to get introductions and trying to help them. And really, you can't go in self-serving, and you never will. And it's not, for me, when I interact with folks and when I find people that I want to do business with or work with or create synergies with and align my referrals with, it's because I can talk to them. I enjoy them. We get along. I could be friendly with them. We have common interest and a passion that aligns obviously into whatever vertical that is. And at the end of the day, I like them. I can't go do business with someone I don't like. Because it's self-serving, right? And I can't go in there just saying, hey, I want leads or give me a referral. I always look for ways I can help, whatever that is. It could be marketing, it could be introductions, it could be time management, it could be whatever they want help with. It doesn't really matter, right? And as you build relationships, like, Stephen, if you've hit me up and, asked me anything, I'm going to try to help you, right? Any way I can. And so I've always led with that mentality, which has served pretty well, because then, the more people you help and the more people you help get what they need, in turn, it comes back to you tenfold, right? And I'm not talking monetary, I'm not talking, commissions or anything like that, but in ways you don't even understand or would never even guess. It's like, I get amazed all the time about, just that, just wanting to help people. And then all of a sudden it's like these opportunities come out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, I didn't even expect that, right?
I want to just make a comment. I want to make a comment about exactly what you were saying about like going where your clients were. And this is something that I'm going through right now, and then something that actually happened yesterday. A couple of years ago, I joined like one of the nicest private golf clubs in the area, right? And I was still early on in my career with my prior agent. Should not be paying for this golf membership that I was golfing with. But my mentality was, these are the people that I want to go after. And then when I started T5, I put my standards in place. I don't write no prior. I'm looking for this exact clientele. So I'm sharing this story because when you said go where your clients are, that doesn't have to be for just a niche. It doesn't have to be to go to the trucking association. It can be for the high value personal lines clients that you're trying to go join that golf club, be around those people, right? And so I can tell you now, being a member of that club for 3 years, the revenue that my agency makes from the connections that I made at that golf club way surpass what it cost me to be a member there now. And
Yep.
and the other part of this story, and Sean knows this, is I had one of the biggest commercial meetings yesterday for a personal lines guy that was a connection that I had from the golf club. So
Let's go.
putting myself in the situation, and that doesn't have to, I didn't join there to say I'm joining this golf club so I can only talk to the people that own restaurants that are members of this golf club, right? I joined there because they're the higher class people, the people that are worried about their insurance, that have money to spend on their insurance, not talking standard or minimums and different things like that. And so I just wanted to share that because that's something that just hit me when you said that. It does not have to be something specific when you're looking at just kind of surrounding yourself with where your client's at. And we could do a whole nother podcast on the story of putting yourself in your client's shoes, right? And so, and Cameron, I know you've done stuff with the trucking podcast, and we should certainly get into that and talk about that. Like, if you're going to focus on this one thing, whether it's high value personalized client, trucking, whatever it is, get yourself where those people are.
Yeah. And, there's a lot that goes into it. And so I owe an immense amount of credit to some of the early people that I had interacted with, came across, that I have since become friends with. A couple names that people would recognize are folks like Chris Paradiso, Mike Stromso, Todd Shepard. I know he kind of retired. He's doing some stuff, but Crowley, there's name, and the list goes on and on and on and on. I don't want to leave anyone off, but I'm not going to go into that because it'd take that whole episode to go through people that have impacted me. But there's things that I take away from each of those people. But the biggest thing was like their willingness to literally take your phone call and help. And in fact, this story still impacts me to this day. I remember from my first IAOA meeting back in San Antonio, way back when, I had just reached out to Mike Stromso, and I was just kind of moved by his topic and his conversations. And a lot of it surrounded like marketing and how to get to 100% of your market. You got to market 100% of the ways, and, don't be afraid to send, mailers, and don't be afraid to do the emails and the social, like all the different things that you would do with marketing. But I remember the biggest thing, I called him and he took the time to chat with me and was so grateful and went through all this stuff. But then at the end of the meeting, he had asked for my mailing address. And I remember probably being in a position, a lot of scratch agents are, is like, hey, what do you read? Or how do you get your mentality? How do you, whatever. The questions go on and on and on. But then, I don't know, a week later, I get this huge package. I'm like, what is this? It's from Stromso. I open it up and it's a box of books that have impacted him, with handwritten notes in the books of how they helped him in his journey and how they could potentially help me. And so that stuck with me. So I've sent a ton of books to a lot of people, and a lot of people that reach out for help or guidance, and I'll help any way I can and kind of help them ask the right questions and shift their mindset to what helps them. Because like I could lay out my game plan to you guys and it may or may not work, right? But what I like to do is ask the questions and help you explore your unique propositions, your unique thought process. Maybe I could shed some light on some things that you're thinking about, but let's expand it and like, have you thought of this? But big thing is books, right? Read, educate, Audible, all these things that can help you keep you. And motivation's not a great term to use, but like can give you motivation in times when maybe you need it, but discipline ultimately will get you through all that. But then expand your mind to thinking about things that never even thought of that. Like I didn't go to college, right? I spent a little bit of time in college, but I effectively dropped out to get into insurance. So I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I never stop learning, and I'm always consuming things that can help me. That's why I'm at conferences. That's why I'm paying for coaching courses. That's why I'm seeking out people that have done it better than I have. I got high level CEO friends and groups that I'm involved in, and friends and all these centers of influence that are just great high level people. And, so I would say, make sure you guys are doing that. Right.
And what I love about that is you just said, oh, I'm not the smartest and this and that. And you're surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be like, right? Same thing that I just went on a tangent on about surrounding yourself around your clients for your own
Yep.
personal development in your scratch agency journey. Make the phone call. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? It's going to be like a possible client where they're going to hang up on you. And like we talk about that a lot in this podcast, but like through the channels of IAOA and just all those names that you mentioned, their willingness to just share or say, I'm going through this is just incredible.
Yeah, Cameron, talk to me about the trucking podcast. How did that go? How is it going? How has it helped with the niche? I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of wraps into the Stromso comment of, for us, if we're going to market, and actually this wasn't branded with my agency or anything, so I guess this is kind of a little off, but what are ways that we can connect and get out and be where our clients are and all this kind of stuff. So me and a couple of my producers were chatting one day, and it's like, how do we educate? How do we give back? How do we provide content? Because we all know in this day and age, like, your content needs to be out there. You need to have a website. Great. You need to have Google reviews. Great. You need to be active somewhat on LinkedIn and the Facebook groups and the stuff where your people are at. So that way they know you're real, right? And that's why people do blogs. That's why people do all these different things that we do. But one of them was truly from a stance of education. How do we educate either our ideal clients or people that are in the industry on real problems, on real solutions, real company or technologies that can truly make an impact on their businesses and help them in some way, shape, or form, or open their eyes to something they didn't know about? Because, I don't know what I don't know, just like everybody else. And so initially it was like, hey, let's do a weekly, topic, 5-minute, topic or video or 20, whatever it ended up being. And through conversation, the way I think from that just initial idea, and then within 5 minutes, it's like, all right, we're doing a podcast. It's like, we'd be Joe Rogan, let's blow this bitch up, let's get it going. But in my mind, though, it made sense because I'm like, hey, our clients are truck drivers. So what do? They drive all day, right? So, would they listen to a podcast? I don't know. I didn't go into this thinking anyone would listen to it except maybe my wife and kids. So we just started doing it, and at first it sucks and it's uncomfortable and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. And and it was a burning desire of mine for a long time because I had been featured on a couple podcasts with, Josh Berg with Blue Line, shout out to him, Carruthers, with the Power Producers podcast, and just some other folks that I was fortunate enough to get on there because I was like, man, I want to do that. I'd love to get on and chat. I thought it was so cool and maybe trendy at the time. But, so when the opportunity came up, and Steven, Crowley, him and I were chatting, and he knew, because we do our goals, we do our annual planning, we do all this stuff. And he knew that it was on my mind for a while. Like, I'm going to start a podcast. And so then the producers came up with that, and that was the moment. It's like, oh shoot, just seize the moment. Let's get it done. And why am I waiting? What am I scared of? What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. People aren't going to listen to it. You're going to be bad on camera or, on the mic, it's like, what's the worst that happens? So we took the steps, we did it. It was fun. It was exciting, and started getting listeners and started have people reaching out. I've had underwriters reach out. I've had other industry synergy folks reach out. I've had people that just called to say, hey, I love what you're doing. I've had clients reach out. I've got clients that way too. There's all kinds of things. And I didn't do it from the stance of let's do a podcast and get leads. And that's where people get hung up. If I do this, what's the ROI? How many people are going to come to me? How much money am I going to make from that? And it's like, yeah, that's not why we're doing it. I'm not doing it for that, right?
Yeah, and Cameron, when you say, you're discussing problems that truckers have, are these insurance-specific problems only, or is it all problems in general that they have? Problems related to accounting or whatever.
For sure. Have you guys seen that Progressive commercial where Flo is on her way over, and her sister has this baby that won't go to sleep, and Flo starts talking about insurance, and the baby goes to sleep? Have you all seen that?
I think I have. Yeah.
Okay. So no, I don't talk about insurance, Sean. Because that would be the quickest way, except for people that are insurance, to be like, yep, no, we are done. So is there insurance topics? Yes. Have I had insurance folks or certain things involving captives or whatever the thing is at the time that we're talking about? Yes, we had a little bit of influence on that. But primarily, it's kind of what you guys do, right? It's I don't plan it. It's free flow format. I get somebody on that's interesting to me or that's doing something that I admire. And it's like, gosh, these guys are doing something really cool. And we just have conversations. I want to learn more about what they're doing. How are they making an impact on their ideal client or the community or the industry they're in? Which mine just so happens to be trucking and transportation. But so then we just start talking about that. And it could be from technology. It could be from FMCSA or compliance. It could be from a carrier standpoint. I've had Kenworth on. We've had folks from all different kinds of industries on there. And it's talking about what they do. And it's talking about how they impact the truckers. And it's talking about how they can help them or whatever. And it's not a pitch or a promo. Sometimes there's a couple segments that might come off like, hey, they're just straight maybe pitching product. But that's not what it is. It's like it's expanding more onto the real world problems, the state of the economy,
trends.
It's a lot to go through on that. But hopefully that answered your question. We're not talking about insurance.
Totally. Okay. So, I didn't think so, but I thought that'd be a good. I thought that'd be a good topic to cover because I feel like a lot of people think that I'm going to start a podcast and just talk about insurance related topics, and it's like, does anybody really want to listen to that?
Insurance agents do.
That's true.
They're great podcast listeners.
Yeah, well, that goes back to who's your audience, right? I mean, that makes it
exactly.
Totally.
My audience isn't insurance people, so there are some that come or stumble across it or know that I do it, so they'll check it out, maybe because they love me or whatever. I don't know. And I get feedback from those, but there's a reason you guys don't see the ads, or there's a reason that insurance people, aren't listening to it, right? Because it's not intended for them.
Gotcha. So Cameron, you got your business plan. You got the landing page, the separate entity, and all that stuff for the niche. You join the association. You get involved with the groups. From a prospecting standpoint, do you do any cold calling? Do you buy any leads? Do you hire any companies to set up appointments for you? Is there anything outside of what you already mentioned that from a prospecting standpoint might be interesting?
Like the secret sauce?
Doesn't have to be a secret sauce.
I'll tell you the secret sauce.
All right,
that phone's not that heavy, man. It's really not. People think that it's so heavy. They like try to pick it up, it just won't come up. But no. So let's go back to how I started. How did I start? It was cold calling. Calling people, getting uncomfortable. Like one of the phrases I like to use with my producers, and some of our producer meetings get a little wild, but basically like a simple one's like, you're going to be uncomfortable one of two ways. You can be uncomfortable by being broke and like comfortable, like because you're not bothering people, or you can get uncomfortable. Let's get in front of some people, cold call some people, and actually make some money, right? And do what we're doing and impact lives. So like when I still do cold call, it's a different level, and it shifts over time and evolves for what your clients are. And just like in any thing, Steven went from I'm not doing no prior to now they're you know what I mean? Like he probably did clients that had no prior before. Well, now he's evolved. And so it's the same level within your niches. You start to evolve, and it's the same with my producers. They evolve as well. So yes, we do the cold calling. We do all the marketing blasts, the targeted ads. You pay for the SEO, you get involved, you do the publications, you try to speak, you try to show up to the events, you get involved with the charity and the community work that is important to them. All those different things. And so, yeah, we still cold call. I still enjoy it. Like, in fact, later this afternoon, I've got a session with my producers where we're going to go through some objection handling and make some calls and, just kind of help out with some, maybe people are getting hung up on stuff and getting objections that, whatever. So I'm going to try to help any way I can on that. So
is that, is that like a role play, like a training you do with your producers? Like, hey, if the prospect says this, how do you respond? Is like
a little bit of it will be, because I think like anything, you got to practice, right? The 10,000 hour rule. And I think you got to stay sharp. And I think you got to kind of iron sharpens iron type thing. But some of it too is like just listening in on other people on the call. Now we're all remote. That's the beauty of what we do, but you pop up a Zoom screen and then you listen to them make a couple calls, right? And then they might listen to me make a call or two, and they might, you know what I mean? So then now it's kind of a little bit of an interactive session where, because we're not all in the same office, like back in the day was a lot of fun. You get a bunch of people cold calling and like it's exciting and there's a buzz and like everyone's all amped up. But we try to do it in a way where it's like, okay, sweet. I can listen in on you and like I'll take some notes, provide some feedback. How do you think that went? Where did you think that went wrong? Or is there anything that we could have done a little bit different? Because I think the easy thing to do, and this is a common thing you'll start to run into as you start being a little bit more proactive on outreach and cold calls and stuff, is people could be very good at getting someone on the phone and talking to them. But what they're not good at is figuring out, does that person actually even have a need or want to talk to you? Or did you just do a really good job at slip and guard, having a conversation, being friendly with them? They think they know you, them saying yes, agreeing to get a quote, but then you're following up, and you never get the info to quote, right? Because they didn't want to really get a quote in the first place. Let's be real. So there's steps and methods. And I had dabbled with hiring, cold call, appointment setters and that kind of stuff. And we initially did some things like that. I didn't do the cold call appointment setting initially. We had some lead sources and some inward facing things where I had people answering that and setting appointments. We've done everything. So if you think about it, you try it, you do it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it's like, okay, let's try to tweak it, move on. I've done so many things that don't work. I couldn't even tell, you know what I mean? And then it's like, all right, can I make it work? And it's just not working. It's like, all right, scrap that idea. And I found that the appointment setters, cold calling, the folks that do all that may or may not be good. They're not the person to talk to, and they're not you. When I do it and I get somebody on the phone, I'm me, and it's a high level conversation. And my odds of converting that person, if they truly do have a need, are very, very, very high. I'm not going to outsource that work because I'm lazy and just hope to get these appointments set for me. And I haven't found any success in that. I'm sure some do, and I hear people do, but I think that's low level at the core, and it doesn't produce any high level results. And my best clients, my biggest clients, have come from cold calls.
I love that. I really love the idea of the Zoom like interaction with the producer. Like, hey, let's both block out an hour. You make 10 calls, I'll listen to you. I'll make 10 calls, you listen to me, and let's give feedback to each other. I think that's a fantastic idea. That's something I might try to implement at my agency. You guys have been doing that for a while. You've seen good success with it?
Yeah, we have. And I mean, it ebbs and flows. And with summertime, right? Like, it's like, all right, guys, we're not meeting for a month or whatever. But get back to the consistency. And that doesn't mean that the producers aren't being consistent with their goals and their daily objectives and their things. So part of what I do, which may or may not be different, and a lot of it comes from other folks like David, and you'll find that a lot of the high level and successful people all have some similar map or formula. So create a business plan. It's something I did early on, and it kind of blew my mind. And then I remember, David talking about it, and it's like, I love that idea. And we do it. I just wasn't as religious about it as I am now. So before even a producer comes to work with me, what do? A business plan. Right? They're writing a legit business plan and submitting it to me, because then I see what their motivations are, how they think, what they think they can do, what they think their center of influence is. Are they going to do social media? Are they going to door knock, cold call, whatever? I get an idea of what makes them move. And then I have them create their own goals. I don't set their goals for them. I'll help push them, because I think people are pretty safe in setting goals a lot of the time. So I'll challenge them, but they come up with their business plan. They come up with their ideal schedule, their ideal clients, their ideal round table, all this kind of stuff, and then create their own goals. And then we just try to hold them accountable as best we can, provide the tools, the mentoring, the resources, the consistency, the meetings, and bring outside people in. Like, I brought Crowley in to do videos, the importance of video and the impact of videos that it can have for your clients. I've had David come in on other topics. I've had a lot of people come talk to my team via Zoom that have been super impactful, right? Because I could say it, but I'm like the dad. They don't listen to me. I have Steven come tell me, tell the team, and they're like, oh yeah, man, that's such a great idea. I'm like, I've been telling you this shit for like 3 years. They just weren't listening, So there is good in breaking up that monotony and getting other voices in, even if it's the same thing you're going to say. I do find it helps, and it increases and sparks a little bit of engagement for a bit. The other thing too, when you're looking at niches, is you got to see, like, what is the value proposition I bring to this, right? Steven mentioned breweries. It's like, what is the value prop I'm going to bring here? What carriers do I have now that have an appetite for this? So going all the way back, and it's like, hey, I'm interested in this niche, but I'm not passionate per se because I didn't grow up in it, right? Steven, I know you mentioned that.
Yep.
One way I think that if someone was going to explore that idea is to go to your current partners, meaning your MGAs, your direct carriers, your large commercial, whoever you work with, talk to the underwriters. Where is the opportunity that you feel you're going to be super successful right now that you're not getting a ton of traction on, but we've got a decent pool to pick from? And start exploring that. Then who's the competition in that space? Who controls all those? Who's writing those? What agents or agencies or direct carriers are really good at that? Let's go look at what they're doing. What value can I bring now? How can I solve problems? Because if I'm just calling to quote your insurance, hey, let me save you a couple bucks and da 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 da, you live by the sword, die by the sword. What value do they actually bring? It's like, tell me why you're better. Oh, I answer my phone. We actually call you back. We give certificates. We do this. We're better at service than everybody else. It's like, get the fuck out of here, with all that stuff, right? So like you have to truly dive down to how can you help that client? And so we've done a ton of things from additional resources, claims, compliance. Really, when we look at it, and this is just because it's our niche, but like when we look at it, it's like, how do we become an integral piece to their operation? And how do I make them help create the right decisions and make the right decisions and look at profitability, look at all these different things. So for like personal lines clients, if you say you niche in high net worth and all you do is their home and auto, are you truly a niche player and an expert in that? Or are you looking at their annuities and their life? And are you looking at disability insurance and their assets and potentially the business and the excess policies? And they're probably serving on boards. So like, how do we cover their exposure there? Like, how do I become affluent in that and talk to the attorneys and the wealth managers and all the people that they interact with and understand it at a high enough level? I don't have to do their jobs, but I need to understand what's important to them and how I can properly advise and protect them, right? I can't just say, hey, I got Chubb or whoever, and I can do your home and auto, man. I'm a high net worth expert now, right?
Right.
You can't do that. And another huge component to that is too, so after you have identified the niche and you've talked to the underwriters and you've evaluated the competition, it's like little blue ocean strategy, like, great, I got an opportunity here. Let's go over and like take a run at this. Read the contracts, read the policies, understand what each policy means. You'd be amazed how many agents haven't read a policy or the policies they're selling or understand the exclusions or the additional add-ons, which all these things, right? You hear these nightmares and I feel so unfortunate for a lot of clients because they buy these policies not knowing, because it's cheaper, because they did their due diligence. They talked to 10 agents. Someone was half the cost. Well, the worst time to figure out that you got cheap insurance is when you have a claim, right? And they're not even worried about how much they saved. Am I covered? Well, no, sorry, you're not, because either my ignorance or we chose to leave that off, or we were competing on price. So guess what? I undercut some things that probably shouldn't have. And now you had a claim and crap, that would have never happened, but you're not covered. You know what I mean? So all these things matter, right? Understanding what you do, are so vital and so important to the success of the longevity there, because the worst thing in a niche is a bad reputation.
One thing you just reminded me of there is setting the expectation and pre-qualifying the client, which if you want to listen more about that, we had an excellent episode with Michael Cruz and talked exactly about that. But I've been starting to do that in my discovery calls and the discovery phases of, here is our approach and this is why we take this approach. Our motto, understand, educate, protect. We understand your risks, we educate you on your options, and we protect you. And this is why we do it in this process. And if you get the pushback, well, I'm just looking to compete against what I got from State Farm, or I'm just looking to compete, that you may not be a good fit for our agency, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But to your point, Cameron, in my opinion, when you take that approach, you're going to have a very, very better chance of not having those conversations of you could have had this, but we didn't do it because of this or whatever. When you take that more advisory approach, which we know is a big buzz thing going on in the industry. But Cameron, as we look to wrap this thing up, we got a famous last question that I'm going to hit you with here. If tomorrow morning you were to wake up and start over from day one, start over, first day career in insurance again, what is something that you would do different from day one now that you know about with all your experience now? What's one thing that you would do different?
It was such a different time, right? Am I waking up tomorrow with the tools and the resources we have today?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're waking up tomorrow.
I'm all legit tomorrow. Like I give you my agency, Steven, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do that millionaire in a month thing. And like, let's figure it out.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
I'll take the other half.
Sounds good to me.
Dude, you don't want my headaches, bro. I promise. Oh, that's a great question.
One guest said run the other way, and you can't say that.
No, because I truly, you know, people always say, like, if you truly love what you do, you'll show up and work without getting paid. And there are so many things that you do as a scratch agency owner, as an insurance agent, or whatever you want to, like, whatever segment you're in, that you don't get paid on, or you don't see the immediate return. So what I would do different is I would think so you got to remember, I started at age 20 and 21. So you can imagine there was a ton of things that I did that I wouldn't do now at age 37 and 38 moving forward, via distractions, via, you know, whatever you do in your 20s, right? Like you're super disciplined, go to bed early, you eat right, you don't go out and don't go to Nashville and all that kind of stuff. Like, so for me, I think I would put a heavy emphasis on laying the foundations. I do a heavy emphasis on truly evaluating my core principles, my ideal client, setting up from the ground level, my services, my flow, my processes, my efficiencies, the website, utilizing the automation, since you're allowing me to be in this time and have all this access to resources, right? And I would make a heavy investment into this platform that I can then scale. Because what happens is you go into a niche or you go into growth mode as a salesperson, you're not focused on that, right? You're focused on writing and eating because you're starving and you need to just make money. And then next thing you know, you look up and it's like so many inefficiencies, so many problems, so many broken promises on the promise that you set with that client at the level of service and all these things that you wanted to do and you had the best intentions of doing, but you got too busy. So I would really focus on the process side of things is what I would do.
Love it. Cameron, thanks very much for taking the time again to join us here. For people who want to just reach out to you, maybe something you said, just hit a spark with them and they want to touch base with you more, or just follow along in your journey, what's a good way to get in touch with you?
Social media is a big way. LinkedIn's probably the best. And then, you know, hit me up through there. I would say not emails. I'm not great at emails. So I would say LinkedIn. So if they got questions, they want to connect, they want to do anything, and like I can help in any way, just, you know, hit me up through that for sure.
Awesome. Well, everybody, that is another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.